Welcome back. Thank you for being back with us. After such a long tea break, I was wondering if you guys had already gone for a drive in the Porsche. Good to see all you guys back. We've got two more very interesting sessions before we wind up for the day and we find out who's going to drive in the Porsche. This session is on securing debt financing, and we have the moderator for this session, who's the co-founder and director for Kotak Realty Fund. He brings to the dais a wealth of experience, almost 2 decades, 17 years actually, in investment management and corporate finance. His former experiences include, of course, Jones Lang LaSalle and C.B. Richard Ellis. Ladies and gentlemen, your moderator, V. Hari Krishna. Sir. Seated next to Mr. V. Hari Krishna, we have the lone lady on the panel. She is a director and VC with Milestone Capital with various experiences. She leads the management of 8 private equity funds, equity schemes with an AUM of 32,000 crore rupees. She's also a member on the real estate panel of FICCI. Ruby Arya. Next to Ruby, at her left-hand side, yes, we got that correct, we have Sailesh Srinivasan Gopalan, my apologies, Srinivasan Gopalan. He is the CEO and CFO of the Wadhwa Group. He also brings a wealth of experience, started off in the financial departments of chemical companies like Ghada Chemicals and ChemBoss International. He was last the CEO of Rotu Technologies, Life Sciences and Chemical Organizations, and now, of course, he is with the Wadhwa Group. This end of the panel, we have Amar Mirani, who is the CEO, Xander Finance. His experiences include Lazard India, ILFS, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and head of the real estate vertical for Kotak Investment Banking. With about 15 years of investment banking experience, he now heads Xander's credit platform in India and oversees the regulatory and financing areas of Xander Finance. Completing the panel, we have Shehzad Madon, who is the head PMS and alternative assets for Reliance Capital. He's best known as being the guiding force behind the launch of the first ever real estate offering via the PMS route. With about 25 years in the industry, encompassing banking, investment management and financial services, he's here with us today. Thank you, sir, for being with us. We have a dropout from the panel, and that is purely due to personal reasons. We will not be having Mr. Ambrish Singh of DSP Merrill Lynch Credit Capital with us today because very suddenly there was a family emergency and he's not with us. But we have an eminent panel. We would, of course, miss Ambrish Singh. And now it's time to hand you over to your moderator for secured debt financing, Mr. V. Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Post-2008 structuring has obviously become a bad word. It's probably right up there with cannibalism and Yuvraj Singh. But I guess on today's panel, we will try and delve into the real issues that a lot of the debt capital providers and debt capital absorbers are facing at this point in time, and indulge in a bit of crystal ball gazing as well to see how things sort of pan out. Now, coming to the panel discussion format itself, one, I've been watching a lot of times now, prime time hour, so that's one alternative. The other alternative is I could pose a few questions to all of you, and then please feel free to jump in and add to that. And may I caveat the audience that the composition of the panel is entirely It's accidental because there are 4 capital providers and 1 capital recipient here. so let me start with the capital recipient.
I have enough appetite though.
So Sheen, let me ask you a question. Do you think that the real estate companies, developers such as yourselves, actually make the kind of returns which would justify the debt financing rates which are prevalent in the industry at this point in time? And 2, why is there lack of equity, especially so in the last few years? What's your take on that?
Very good question. I think I was just been sharing who makes money in this entire value chain. To be very honest, we are primarily very Mumbai focused developers, and if you buy land at the current prices, the margins are not at 18-20% that we are talking about. So I think as institutions, you need to get wary when someone borrows at 20-22%, because he may, and if he doesn't negotiate at all, right? Because he may be wanting to just pay you your 20-22% and not the 100 rupees that you have given. So somewhere there has to be correction. Two places where there need to be correction. One is in the land price itself. So that at some point in time has to go down if this industry has to survive. The second thing that we are facing is the cost. The cost that we put on the Excel sheet when we buy the land and where we land up, there is a difference of at least 50%. So because of a new law that keeps coming, fungible comes on one day, and then there are some of the committees just don't sit for years together, and the cost of holding it actually kills you. So if there is an efficient system, then I think we will make around 16 to 20%, and if we run the system well, external as well as internal, and in that case banks can, construction finance can charge us 12 to 13%, and Shehzad can charge us 16 to 18%. But under the current circumstances, I think what most developers would be doing is to replace one debt with another, or they would be funding the interest through these high costs. So that is where I think you as institutions need to be really wary as to where is this money actually getting used. Is it for servicing or is it for replacing a debt? Somewhere the color would be that is my assessment. Coming to the second question of why is there no equity? I think unfortunately developers have something called an appetite for infinite risk taking, right? And when we actually sit across and negotiate with a private equity guy for pure equity, we assume that he will have a similar equity risk taking ability as what we have, which can never match. So so the valuation game, it just doesn't happen. So when there is no clear equity coming in, and I don't really blame, because there are so many uncertainties that you will have absolutely no control of. Once you give money to a developer, then the developer runs the show. And we would prefer that you don't interfere, because your USP is money and our USP is running this thing. Given that, you don't know whether we will get permissions or not. How innovative have we been in our design to get our permissions? So given that, I don't blame. There should not be pure equity from a pure institution. There should be a strategic tie-up where both are developers and have equal appetite to do something. That is where the real equity can come. Then comes the structured deals, which is the topic for today. I believe today the financial world talks about more structures than what we make. We make the real concrete structures, but there are so many exotic structures that people talk about. Ultimately, these are all debt. Somewhere you need your capital protection, somewhere you need your minimum return. You may take a 5% risk here and there. So equity to come into this country first needs a policy at the top which ensures that there is an exit time which is finite if the developer knows his business. So unless and until that happens, I don't think we will see pure equity coming.
You want to add to that?
See, on the first point, I have a view which is different from Srini's.
Please don't say that.
It's as follows. My sense is that the higher cost lending, and when I refer to higher cost, I'm talking 18 plus, right? With some, it's sort of fixed with little variable, etc. Typically is for land funding. My sense is land funding almost ever, if you look at history, has never been cheaper. In fact, it's always been 20 and 20 plus. That's our sense of it. In fact, more often than not, I could argue that more money is available today with more competition among lenders, and it explains that there is one developer and so four sort of financiers sitting here, right? There is that much more competition for lendings, and there's always somebody new, there's somebody else coming out. So my sense is that I don't think the rates are exorbitant. I can understand from a developer's perspective, and I completely take Srini's point here that what's really impacted a lot of the, in terms of calculations, is especially approvals and the time taken. So let's just say if I had borrowed 100 rupees and I had assumed that I'm going to get cracking and I'll go out and start selling. When I realized that, yaar ye to 2 saal lag gaya approval mein, to 2 saal mein mera 20% ka, meter chad raha hai, so to speak. That makes it unaffordable. So I guess the approvals and all the other costs which have come off have that sense made it difficult. Bombay more so also, if anyone had used some of that leverage partly for doing commercial, and a lot of the, let us say, difficult situation developers are in some cases, not in all, is on account of the, what's happened in the commercial market, which we all know, more so in Mumbai. when you stack this all up, it's at this point in time that and when you break it up project by project, if you took something like a higher higher rate on commercial, that didn't make sense, so to speak, or it's not making economic sense at this point in time. But longer term, when you look at it, all things said, all put together, you look at it this way, look at the last few years, look at projects which developers did over the last few years. Generally, they have not been, even at a 20-ish% rate, they've got return. The other thing which I would just, sort of remind everybody here is that it's not just the margin, it's the ROE. Example, see, a lot of people, well, leverage. Srini spoke about the infinite capacity for sort of risk. If there's 80% leverage, 20% equity, and chances are sometimes, not in all cases, the 20% too is borrowed from someplace else. When you actually look at the equity return, and even if you're talking about a smaller margin, if you're talking about a far smaller margin in terms of the ROE on the developer's investment is large. 50 crore dal ke, he does 1,500 crore, 2,000 crore ka, plus top line, 2,000 crore ka project. So when you look at the, net, even if you make 150 crores on that, that ends up in terms of ROE a fair amount. So, my submission would be that from a land financing perspective, these rates are probably reasonable. As far as the second point which Srini did mention on the equity part, and I completely agree with him that, there's a risk mismatch in terms of appetite between the developer and, let's say, most funds or most fund houses or most investors, including ourselves. But one other thing which I'd like is that, in many ways, there are two points which I just want to make. Very often on the, sort of debt return or debt mezz return, when you're getting 18 to 22, why stress yourself too much about equity? Jab mile nahi mile, Bhagwan janta hai. Might as well take what you have in hand. Beast for most guys is good, right? So that's one reason. That's one reason which you would want to. The other reason is historically, and maybe that's a learning process. We've seen that in every market. You've seen that in the listed equity space too. The initial phase, not all investors had a very happy experience. Of course, you could argue not all developers too had a very happy experience with investors, but you know what happened to a lot of investors, and they never ended up making money, because if people make the money, I'm sure the money will be available. If investors start making money, they will find a route, they will find a way to get the money back. So net, that's my take on both these points. That current rates, assuming you have a more let us say a smoothened out approval process, things work a little more as per expectation, maybe they could sustain. That's my sense.
Thanks. Ruby, let me ask you this question. How have you seen the market evolve over the last 3 to 4 years, especially on debt or equity kind of mixes? And could you also comment on the fact that whilst equity is getting raised, certainly in the residential vehicles as well, you have seen Godrej APG joint venture. Similarly, there has been a joint venture between Mahindra Lifescape and Accenture. So there is equity clearly available, not as much as probably what's available in the office space market, where there is significant equity. How do you see this? How do you see this evolving over the next few years?
So just to sort of take you back into the evolution stage, and probably I'll delve even earlier than 3 to 4 years. So if you sort of look post 2005 and the pre-crisis era, I mean, all the deals that were inked, especially in the residential, in the real estate space, were all equity deals. And there was a reason to it, because there was a sudden influx of money, there was a rush to invest, there was more money chasing very few deals, and hence you found that there were valuations were high, people took exorbitant risks, the project timelines were not dealt with properly, and people just invested the monies. And not all of that investment has really yielded returns, if you look at it. Then what happened is, after the crisis, I mean, we saw 2009 to 2000 era was all structured debt lending. Because people realized that, you've taken a risk, you've lent money in equity, but has it really given you the returns that you were looking for? Probably not. And again, there was a liquidity crunch, and the bank financing was not available for the, the land stage. And you could get structured debt at an early stage. There was no end-use restriction. The developer could use it for growth capital, for, taking money out, putting it in the project. And hence, there was an alignment of interest between the developer and the investor. So you saw a lot of structured deals, taking place. However, we realized that there were deals as high as 24%, 27%, which has got inked. But, of course, a lot of refinancing options have now come into the market, and are we able to sustain those high IRRs? Probably not. So now we feel that there will be and this is a, different point of view than what Srini said. I personally feel that it will come a full cycle, all the way, and there will be a comeback of equity, but in a slower fashion. So, you will see the interest rates probably coming down, maybe in a year or two's time, and which is when these rates at which you lend to the developers will also come down, which is when you will find that, top developers, I mean, we named the Godrej, we named Mahindra Lifespaces. I mean, these kind of developers, they will be they have already attracted equity capital, and, they are the kind of people who have a good corporate governance, transparency, and investors will want to participate with them with equity capital. Also, the other set of developers which will probably be able to attract equity is the kind of people like Shehzad mentioned who've given returns. So if you've given returns on the whether it was equity deal or a structured debt deal, I'm sure you will be able to attract equity capital. In the commercial space, of course, most of the deals that are there are equity in nature, and Milestone themselves has in fact, we've done all kinds of deals, so we've done pure equity, we've done preferred equity, we've done structured debt, we've done debt with equity upside. So, I mean, I personally think that depending on who you are lending money to, there will be a lot of hybrid of debt and equity that you will find in the market, and probably that's the way to go. But yes, for the moment, as long as the valuations remain high, the liquidity crunch remains, the developers are stressed, sorry, I mean, no offense meant, but as long as that is the system, I think, for some more time, structured debt will remain the flavor. But will equity not come back? Yes, definitely it will.
Thanks.
That's very encouraging.
Shehzad, could you comment on what's the sort of appetite out there in terms of undrawn capital commitments or otherwise amongst the different capital sources, whether it be wealth management-led private equity firms or global private equity firms or mutual funds or whoever else? And do you see any difference in the risk appetite amongst these 3 or 4 different capital sources? And Amar, if you could weigh in on that subsequent to that.
Sure. Okay. My sense is that when you look at it, of course, there are a lot of funds raised. There is some amount of undrawn capital. There are a lot of wealth managers raising money. There are people doing direct deals. There are funds under AIF. There's offshore money. There's equity. There's just about everything. One of the, just to add to what my colleague said here is that, globally, just before I start answering more specifically, that there's been the last few years, it's been the years of debt, not just in India, but globally. People haven't been that much open to taking equity, but in general preferred more sort of debt, and debt has yielded fairly well, both in India as well as overseas. And I'm not referring to just the real estate space, I'm referring to the overall markets. As far as appetite is concerned, as things stand, my sense is that, Hari, appetite here, it's almost limitless. The constraint is supply, it's not demand. That's my sense, is that there is more demand for, let's put it this way, if you could get good quality investment or good quality paper which could yield you, well, anything in the category we spoke about, 18 to 22, right? I don't see any limitation in terms of appetite, right? You look at it, it's today that the various funds all have had a fairly good reception. And to those, I think somebody made this point here, to those who've been able to deliver, both on equity, there's no shortage of equity, as well as on debt. In fact, you know the situation out there, since a lot of people on the panel as well as out there are practitioners, that there's a competition for refinance. You do a deal and then somebody's ready to take you out in 1.5 years or so forth. So in terms of the fund availability, it's my sense it's fairly good. Certainly in the, call it the AIF space, the VC space, people who had fundraisers, all have done well. The key challenge is to be able to deliver. I guess, a very, very generic statement, a very, very generic statement, that, there's no shortage of money. It's about confidence. And if people believe that party X or party Y, be that a fund house or a developer, is delivering, they've never seen, to my mind, a sort of a shortfall of money. So that's just my take on it. I think just on this in terms of appetite too, I would imagine, and it comes back again to this, that on the equity side there could be, but again timelines get a little more elongated. I'm saying even if the returns come through, even if multiples are higher, that I put in 100 rupees, I take back 250 rupees maybe after a period of time. But the timelines get higher, and at this point in time at least, and maybe in the near future, people want to see cash flow come back. They're not so interested in the longest told story, 5 साल बाद क्या होगा, वो पहले cash flow थोड़ा देख लेंगे. It's sort of that. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I think there's a lot of appetite. Both domestic, and I'm sure Amar will put more on international too, but our sense is, again, it gets supply constrained. You can't give investable names or investable deals to offshore investors. That's my sense.
Amar, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just add, and a lot of points may overlap with what
Sure.
various panelists have said. Now, as far as we see the last few years, these have been debt-oriented, debt-dominated years for a multiple set of reasons. One is, of course, equity did not perform since 2006-07 and then the crisis. Second is that various corporate governance practices, not just of developers, but across India, across various sectors, we saw that there was a significant shortfall between what was promised out in the mid-2000s to what happened in the late 2000s until now. Exits did not happen to the extent desired. 20 billion came in, 3 to 4 billion got exited. So it's a multitude of reasons, and that's why everybody found a convenient way out in debt. Now, if we just rewind ourselves, let's say 15 years back, which is when, let's say, I started my career, it was again very similar circumstances in the mid to late 90s, wherein coalition government, less decision making on the macro front, currency crisis, Asian crisis, interest rates going up. So SBI PLR then was 15.5%, today it's around 15%. 1996, 2013-14. It came down all the way to 10.25% in the mid 2000s, it's gone back. And I'm sure it will come down, it's a cycle, ultimately cycles do play out. So all I'm trying to say is that equity will come back, but it won't be the kind of equity rush that we saw in the mid 2000s. It will be far more muted, at least to start with, till people gain confidence, till people deliver returns and are able to exit with at least a semblance of profit compared to what has happened in the last 10 years. Real estate and non-real estate both, I'm not just saying real estate. Because if you look at the private equity experience in non-real estate, exits and performance of companies and the governance have been separate and significant issues. Now, as far as fundraising is concerned for real estate, we have seen a spate of real estate issuances, real estate funds issuing their paper either to HNIs in India or institutions in India and offshore. And this money is slowly seeping its way into the market. Now, what happens to the market in terms of rates? Obviously, the rates are coming down and will come down as time goes by in the next few months, particularly with elections beyond in the next 1 or 2 months. And however, I don't see that happening very fast, but yeah, rates will come down, A, because of more capital from HNIs and from funds, and B, because also banks will slowly start turning on the taps of lending to real estate. So if you again go back and see how banks have been lending to real estate in the last, say, 6 to 7 years since 2008, bank exposure to real estate was around $8 billion in 2007-8. It's about 24-25 billion today. Banks exposure to NBFCs was around 8 billion in 2007-8. It's about 48 billion today. So what it means, it basically shows that banks are lending to NBFCs and NBFCs are lending to real estate. Banks to real estate has been far more muted because of what happened in 2000s, in the mid 2000s, and RBI has taken a cautious stance to banks, and therefore they have been holding back a bit. So post elections, new government, RBI governor may just say that, yeah, let's look at a revival and let's look at a situation where we're looking at a more calibrated increase in funding from banks. And if that happens, then obviously rates will come down faster. As far as equity is concerned, that also we're seeing signs of equity money coming in. The base, if one can call it that, is getting formed in terms of equity capital getting attracted. Appetite is there, interest is there. Structures have all become conducive for getting equity money. So it's some time away because people have to deliver and get some returns and some exits. And then I think equity money will come in. What it would mean is that once more equity money comes in, refinancing will be a lesser risk than what we see today while we enter a transaction, and therefore while the volume of transactions would go up, rates would come down, is what my general assessment would be.
Do you see any parallels between the China's shadow banking crisis with what you're seeing on ground in India in terms of debt capital raising and allocation and everything else? Do you think there are any parallels at all?
It's similar in some ways, but there are quite a few differences. So I don't think that there is, I mean, there are some bit of similarities, but again in India it's far less, it's far more muted than what it is in China. It's far more restricted to a few cities in terms of what the funding goes into. It's not as rampant and as unrestricted and unbridled as what it is in China. So there's a fair bit of difference. And even today, as one looks at when we're doing transactions in India, for example, it is still fairly under control in terms of the credit standards, the underwriting, the processes that all of us across the industry follow.
Sure.
So it is nowhere close to either a bubble or a overhyped situation what it is perhaps in China, is what my submission would be.
Sure. And this is a question to the entire panel, and Shehzad, you can probably comment on it as well. Do you think there is adequate appreciation of the risk involved in providing this sort of debt capital? And I would draw two reference points. One hears of a lot of the mutual funds, debt schemes, FMP plans, etc., providing capital for land acquisition financing at interest rates which are in the range of 10 to 13%, as against a lot of the capital which is being provided by NBFCs and private equity funds at fairly significantly higher rates. And also, given that the foreclosure experience, the asset sale, asset divestment experience is fairly limited in India.
Sure.
So if you could comment on that. And I
Sure.
would certainly need a comment from Srini, who's on the opposite side of the table.
See, one, just in terms of, before I directly address your question, one thing which I just want to leave on the table, and I'm sure most people will agree with me, that the risk in real estate primarily is, I think, as a security, real estate has generally been a wonderful security, possibly the best security ever that you have, and I'm not commenting internationally, but certainly domestically. It's a good, solid security, and as yet generally has not lost value. So unless you got your title horribly wrong, generally it's great security, great and the best security, right? The risks come more in terms of liquidity, i.e., it's a wonderfully safe and a solid asset. It's not a liquid asset. Especially, your ability to monetize an asset, especially if it's a large land parcel, etc., is a little limited. So the earlier you come in, obviously the more risks you run. So with that general statement as a backdrop, I just want to make the following statements. That, see, one, in general, my sense is, and I am not speaking here, that we understand and others don't, but I'm not sure there is enough of appreciation of risk across all players. Because when you really look at it, the guys who've been in the market for a long time, when I say long time in this business, is about 10, 12 years. Because that's pretty much, I'm not saying from the developer side, but from the financer side, who probably got more experience. And there is a lot, like in any bull market, and we've seen a pretty robust bull market, at least for financing of real estate in the last some time. A lot of newer players, etc., a lot of money available. And my sense is that there's probably not too much of appreciation in terms of the due diligence, the effort, the nuances of each market, and so on and so forth. And that's probably, you will see some amount, and you've already seen it even in the, call it the NBFC high yield space. So I would imagine you will see more of that going forward. So far, you've not even had too much of an opportunity to see it, because kuch bhi hai, so there's enough of refinancing opportunity, so always someone to take you out 1.5, 2 years later. If you have a slightly tighter market, then people's underwriting standards and all also may be that much more visible. In terms of the last point you did mention about funding by mutual funds at lower rates of interest. See, my sense is, okay, if you just look at the history, at one point in time, the mutual funds did some amount of lending like that, but that was probably more in the unsecured space in terms of CPs, etc., but that was in this 07 period. Since then, most have stayed away. There is limited participation in terms of, you did mention some deals and some names, and without getting into the specifics of that, because beyond a point when only years, one doesn't know the actual, what's happened there. But my sense is that stayed limited, and I suspect it would stay limited to more of names where it's corporatized, and not that others aren't corporatized or something, but what I meant where you have another business to sort of lean back on, or cash flows from another business or something that way. And that's my sense. I would be, this is just my sense, and there could be people who are better informed than me. I don't think this will reach the scale it reached earlier. That's again my take, and I don't think it would, I imagine it would stay very limited to a narrow apex, right? Sorry, a very, very narrow level right on top, it would not go too much down. That's at least my sense, because I don't think investors underlying, and the investors in a lot of the funds are, especially a lot of the corporate types and so on, look, if they wanted to chase the high yield, they could have come to maybe any of us. They didn't know to go, you don't need to go through an MF to play that game. So I'm not sure there will be, I'm not sure it would get that much more ample.
So absolutely. As far as MFs are concerned, I think the primary consideration they would employ is a credit rating. And typically what we've seen is in real estate, even the best of developers don't get even half as good a rating as they perhaps should have got had they been normal corporates in other sectors. So if they wear the blinkers of a rating and only then filter out and then they look at proposals, I think 99.9% developers would not meet the grade, and therefore it's not really a source of financing as much as it should be, and because ultimately it is a low cost financing, but it's not really taken off because of this strong reason. Of course there are some stray instances, and that also, like Shehzad mentioned earlier, even those have been in the late 2000s or 2006, 7 and perhaps 8, where stray mutual fund treasuries from some allocations could have done it, but now I don't see that happening also.
So, and just one more thing, typically the MF prefers 1.5 saal ka funding. That doesn't really fit in with the...
So there's a duration discount as well.
Duration difference. Now, of course, if you say that it's sort of bridge funding, etc., which could well be the case, but then that comes with its own risks.
So the way, therefore, it works, the market has evolved is that MF provides money to the NBFC, NBFC provides money to the real estate provider. So that's how the market has evolved.
Some mutual funds are breaking that chain.
Yeah, so some mutual funds absolutely are funding NBFCs, and that's how it's working. So.
Srini, what's your take on this?
I would love to have these mutual funds lending to me at 10-13%. But as you rightly said, real estate unfortunately is an untouchable. Right? Just because you belong to that sector, you don't get a AA, वो तो नहीं मिलेगा, आपको B के बाद बात करो. So under these circumstances, I don't know how an investor will even evaluate a real estate company. The second thing comes on the transparency. What kind of transparency do these real estate companies maintain? You've mentioned a few corporates. Their background is corporate, like Mahindra and Godrej. They have sold soaps and jeeps, right? So from there they come into a real estate game where they have this Pushtani land with them, and then they are working on it. So they are not developers as far as I am concerned. They are corporates. They have their culture, which is very different from developers who actually till the land. We are people who identify the land, look at the vibration, do some Excel sheets, and then go by the gut and go build buildings. So unless and until this becomes a regulated market with complete transparency, we will not get access to cheap funding. And I don't, I'm not against it. We want transparency to come in. For developers, at least like us, we try to follow all corporate standards in order to maintain transparency. But we get lagged out just because we belong to this industry. So I'm not very sure. We were looking for issuing some bonds. And if I want something like 13 to 14%, which from an industry standard, it would be very high, I need a AA+. And I know that it's a futile exercise for me to try that. On the other hand, from the risk point of view, from a security point of view, once the asset is created, Hari, I think this is the best security that you can ever have. You want to lend to a chemical factory which has got boilers and it will have some clariflocculators, whatever names that we won't even be able to, and you are okay to take that security and lend at 12%. And if there is a default there, I don't know what will you do with those green and red pipes. Here at least, there are homes where you and I can live, if I'm not able to liquidate. And these are real either offices where you would want to move. I mean, you are a great example, right? In BKC, moved into an office space, which
no comment.
So here is an asset which is completely secure. Here is an asset which has got alternative uses. May not tell me something. The shares of a company, these are bloody paper. I am providing you with brick, steel, sweat, blood, everything in that, and yet it's a security which has got provisioning which is more than any other industry. So long as you don't treat us like an industry, and so long as developers don't treat themselves responsibly, cheaper finance is going to be a challenge. I do agree for a developer like Vadhva, there is a lot of money chasing us. And yet the questions that come is, yes, why do I come to you? Is because you have delivered in the past. However, there are no concessions on the costing. right? There are no concessions on the due diligence that will be done on to you. We will evaluate you as a Dawood Ibrahim. Okay? We will check, we will frisk to see whether you are carrying bombs with you. So that is the kind of an attitude, and maybe it is because of the past, it is because of how other developers have behaved, who have gunmen protecting themselves. But unless and until this taboo is removed out of the real estate this thing, we will see these things happening. I'm very happy to hear from my colleagues saying that equity capital will come in, and we have exited 7 funds with what has been documented as returns. Okay? No negotiation at the time of repayment, and repayment done exactly 3 years from the date when you have taken. I don't see anyone chasing me to say that here is the money and I trust you. I still don't trust you because you belong to a category which I don't like, but I know I'll make more money through you only, okay, because nobody else makes a return like you provide. Tum Sharif ho, that's why I'm coming to you. The very fact that I've knocked at your door is because of your past performance, but nothing else. So I think things should evolve, and developers also need to demonstrate that they are transparent and they can deliver. There is so much of stock available today, Hari, but I don't believe that that is the stock which is offered is not the stock. The stock is really the lock and key that comes to you. What has been the delivery of this guy, and then you look at the costing, then you look at the kind of due diligence that you want to do. Today, institutions have become larger developers than developers themselves. The first question is, environment में कहाँ पे अटका है तुम्हारा project? अरे अटका किधर है? There is a process. I have applied for environment. It takes 6 months. It takes 9 months for a baby. That is acceptable. But 6 months for an environment is not acceptable. And for no fault of mine, I have done my duty. Like a father, I have done my duty here as well. But these are the questions that come. So, please treat us like human beings. All of us are not Dawood. Trust me, we are the people who can give you the best returns than any other asset class. You take gold, you take shares, you take real estate. Even during a mandi or a slowdown, real estate will give you, because we want to liquidate stock. We want to run a business. And banks are against us. We have private equity guys who are friendly with us at a high cost. And so that, I don't know how friendly that was. So what कर क्या सकते हैं?
I'm going to send you a therapy wheel for getting your house started. So Ruby, let me ask you this question. First, if you could comment on the risk appreciation, and two, when you underwrite a transaction, are you as vigilant and are you as involved from an asset management standpoint? If it's an equity transaction, is there any difference in the underwriting standards? Just because it's a debt transaction, do you look at it differently?
Sure, I mean, just to take forward from what Srini said, I mean, let us understand, we keep talking structured debt, equity. I mean, at the end of the day, all of this security is a comfort that you are taking. I mean, I don't know of any instance when you've actually enforced that security. So it is at the end of the day, what you have to see is how you are underwriting the project. Are you factoring in all the risks? Are you ensuring that your project stays on track? I mean, are there cost overruns? Are there time overruns? How well are you managing it? I mean, that is what is important. Whether it is a debt deal or an equity deal is just a structuring of, it's just a structuring mechanism. But the basics will remain the same, So a real estate fund house, if they are lending money to a developer under whatever structure it may be, will have to ensure that you actively manage the project. You, sort of institutionalize everything in the value chain. So, your sales are happening. If your approvals are stuck, what can be done? There are certain things that we can't control, but at the same time, you have to ensure that in your organization, you have a mechanism to be able to monitor everything. I mean, structured debt is just a tactical opportunity. I mean, if we could lend money to you at 24%, 25%, we did that. Tomorrow, you may not want to take, I mean, when I say you, it doesn't mean you, but...
I would still not want to take.
So, developers may not want to take money at those levels, if interest rates come down, and, they may not want to take money, which is when you will have to trust them for their competence of actually delivering on the project and just ensure that they deliver. So I think that is important, so, and when I say, I mean, you have to have a downside protection, so You have a downside protection, you partnered with the right, developer partners, you are monitoring the project. Debt or equity is just a structuring mechanism, but at the end of the day, you have to do what you have to do to ensure that you are able to get those returns and deliver it back to your investors.
Right. According to sort of variety of different estimates, the Indian banking sector has a whole anywhere between $15 billion to $30 billion. And these are a variety of different estimates, largely stemming from the infrastructure debt financing that they have provided. Now, how do you see, Amar, for instance, if you could comment on that, how do you see that impacting our end of the business? Do you see banks withdrawing because they do not have the capital going forward? It will take some time to fill up this hole. There will be cash flow issues. How do you see this impacting our end of the business?
So, till 2007, 6, 7, everything was hunky-dory. Banks were lending freely. Everybody was lending to developers. But then brakes were applied, and that's not just in India, but even in Europe, for example, banks have actually held back, and capital to so-called riskier areas like infrastructure, real estate, or early stage ventures has been moved from either private equity or specialist entities like NBFCs in India. And the same situation also happened in India from 2008-9 onwards. So as I mentioned earlier, in 2007-8, banks' real estate book was about $8 billion. Today it's about $24 billion, 3 times in 7 years. Now going forward, and the growth has been pretty much organic in line with banks' overall increase in exposure with all the other sectors. So for instance, banks' real estate exposure is between 3 and 3.5% on the whole, as a percentage of the overall lending to all sectors, including agriculture, put together. Now, if tomorrow banks decide to start funding once again, obviously it will have repercussions on what we just spoke about. But coming back to the bank side of the equation, today if you look at banks' balance sheets, so if you spoke to any banker from March 1 to March 31st last month, none of them would have the time to meet you for normal proposals. Everybody would be in the restructuring and the NPA recovery mode. Everybody, right from the CMD to the manager. And therefore, now that that is out of the way, again, same thing may happen again in June and September and so on. So they are saddled with a huge amount of legacy issues which they have to resolve. But at the same time, all of them have growth aspirations, all of them want to lend money, build a book, list it. So all those considerations also are there, and therefore lending to real estate will, in my mind, start increasing once again in the next quarter or 2 quarters, and that the signs of that are already apparent with the tier 1 developers, and Srini would vouch for that, I guess, in terms of higher lending from banks into acceptable developers in the bank's frame of mind. And that is only an additional source which was there earlier, which will come back once again, which would mean a reduction in our rates, the divergence between equity return and debt return, because today both are in the early 20s, so equity and debt both are the same, the divergence has to happen. Equity will go up to the late 20s, debt will come down to the late teens, and banks would be at 12, 13. So I think that is what will happen in the next year to 2 years. Of course, banks they are restructuring their balance sheets, they are resolving their NPAs, and of course that depends on macro, economy, government, politics and all that, but the change and the shift has happened, in my opinion, and we are seeing banks containing their NPAs, restructuring their books, and taking some more amount of incremental exposures in areas like real estate, if not infra.
Sure. We've spoken quite a bit about the residential end of the business, and but on the commercial real estate side, I would think that there are a lot of changes probably already visible, especially on the structured side. You've been hearing about CMBS. We've been hearing about bullet-only kind of loans. Srini, in your conversations with some of the capital providers, I don't know if you've been reaching out to the insurance companies, mutual funds, and some of these other guys, do you see some of these products actually evolving over the next few years?
See, on the commercial side, the challenge that the developer faces is that it's not as liquidating as a residential one. Residential, we use the sales proceeds for construction as well. But in the commercial, you need to have that wherewithal to really put some 500, 600 crores of your capital and wait for the building to come up, the facade comes up, and then you start the leasing happening. So the desperation of the developer is much higher there, right? So we had this huge deal which fell with Morgan Stanley, where that was for one BKC, where everything happened well, and it was a pure equity deal. With a preferred return, but at least there was no minimum guarantee and those kind of deals. But We still feel that investors are averse to construction risk that they would want to take on a commercial asset, and that is why you don't see AAA buildings actually available in Bombay, because the land is so expensive. You land up doing strata sale in order to get the cash flows, and once the building goes through a strata sale kind of a situation, the value significantly drops from an institution perspective. So here there is some kind of innovation that is required from institutions level, where an opportunistic funds ties up with funds like Blackstone, who are wanting to have only the leased asset. That is, you give birth to a baby, make it grow, शादी होने के बाद बच्चा रेडी मुझे चाहिए. So that is the kind of fund that is there on the other side. So you need to map these two. That is an opportunistic fund which is there, and the exit is given by these kind of funds. Once we have those kind of things, you will have buildings like Capital, no strata sold, 1 BKC, no strata sold, completely world-class buildings which are standing there, and the market has to evolve. Currently, we do not have any kind of a product which motivates people like us to go and bid for one more land in Bandra Kurla complex, wherein you land up paying more than 2,000, 2,500 crores only for the land and land related, plus any kind of interest that you need to have to hold those. So I don't think there are any kind of even efforts being taken to forget the developer, to motivate this industry to make world-class products. But similarly, if you look at, if you go say south to say Bangalore or Chennai, where the land cost does not contribute say 60 to 70% of the project cost, is where you also start seeing some good developments, and most of the acquisitions of even leased assets, matlab completed buildings with leased assets, happen there and not in Bombay. So very nascent stage on the commercial side, not providing exits to the creators at all.
Sure. Do you have a view on when one might start seeing these innovations, bullet only kind of loans, CMBS, and what's stopping them?
I guess one of the reasons what's stopping them is people are enjoying the returns on doing the regular stuff so much that why bother yourself with something which may or may not happen or which is innovative. I personally, I would believe there's opportunity in the commercial space, especially given all the pain that one has gone through, and given the fact that when you look at values where they are, especially in Mumbai, I would think that if you have a slightly longer perspective, there is opportunity. Unfortunately, I'm not so sure because we don't manage much of our prop money. We have all third-party money. I don't see that happen as much as from my investor side. It's not that we can't convince them, but it's not as if we haven't struggled to come out with what may be an appropriate structure, but we've not yet been able to crack something on that front. But I do believe there is appetite there, and these things can turn very fast. They can turn on a coin. You just have, let us say, maybe perception of economic growth coming back, maybe post-elections. You have a few licenses. Of course, you've got a few banking licenses. You have something more of that coming through. You have more commercial office space going. You have something on insurance sector going through, and then suddenly you find yourself short of commercial office space. So these things can turn on a coin. And the honest answer is no. I don't have anything which can answer that question today, but we're working on it.
Sure. One final question, Amar. A lot of the groups are trying to obviously address the India real estate debt opportunity, and variety of different routes have been used. The FII debt route, the domestic capital is obviously coming in through the AIF format, and obviously the NBFC opportunity. How do you see, what do you think are the key differences, and what are the different outcomes that you see in different formats, especially with reference to the NBFC versus FII opportunity? How would you want to choose?
So I'll keep it short. So NBFC opportunity versus, let's say, FII, I think it's a question of the vision of the shareholders and sponsors, whether they have a vision for the long term or whether they want to have a transaction by transaction approach. If it's a transaction by transaction approach, then I think the FII, sub-account, listed, rated securities coming in, going out, opportunistic investing is what suits, and it makes sense immensely because of lower taxation also. But if you have a long-term plan to create platform and to grow the platform in not just the NBFC space but also into other areas of financial services, then notwithstanding the higher rate of tax, people are going ahead with the NBFC option because there's a certain platform value, there's a certain, in some cases, an exit value that some sponsors are focused on, and at some point a potential listing, and therefore that opportunity is, I think, more favored by people who are in the long-term business as a financial services provider. Additionally, the one area that makes a big difference is leverage. So leverage from domestic sources, if one is able to tap, it makes immense sense to go for an NBFC because effectively your post-tax cost of debt would be less than 9.5–10%, and if equity is at whatever late teens, your blended cost of capital comes down, and which would only help you to protect your margins once the rates start coming down. So effectively, domestic leverage is a game changer, and that is what makes a big difference.
Thank you. Depending upon how much time we have, we could take up a few audience questions as well.
These people have had enough of us.
This one.
As developers, we have been trying to innovate to bring down the cost either of the land acquisition or the cost of construction through innovation. Can we expect that the debt funding of the structured institutional financing or the banks, can that be brought down with regulatory influences or with some kind of internal soul searching? Because that would allow much more lending and much more happier wedding for lifetime.
We will do some soul searching.
I am with him. So
The silence.
Hari, give a commitment. Come on.
I would leave it to Shehzad.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll come back to what I said again, and then I'll just allude to what Srini said. What I said initially, I don't think 20% is high for land funding. Land funding has never been cheaper at 20. Tell me when in history has land funding been cheaper than 20%? It's never been. Number one. Number two, developers, in spite of a 20% return, end up making, barring maybe like you have, look, you can't get all sub ball pe to 6 nahi maroge na yaar. It's like this. A lot of the commercial projects.
एक तो लग जावे,
यार,
एक
बहुत
तो
सारे
लग जावे
मारे
शहजाद, एक तो लग
मैं
जावे.
ज़्यादा बोलना नहीं चाहता हूँ. But see, the fact is that 20%, 80% leverage very often, etc. ROEs are very, very comfortable. That's my sense for developers. And I can't see it getting much lower. The risks involved in real estate are there. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we say, and when I say real risks involved in real estate, all I'm trying to say, the risk primarily comes from a delay perspective. We've seen so many cases happen. Because you think everything is going well, suddenly you have all of a sudden a bomb. That bomb can come in the form of a PIL, it can come in the form of anything, even when you have a structure up there, standing. So to say that, funding should come significantly below, down to levels where CF, etc. is, in my view, might take some time, and I don't think that makes sense. And the only thing my submission would be here, sir. I'm sure that all the developers here know far more than I do. But whatever little we understand, our sense is, I don't think, barring a little difficulty here and there, but most developers are still doing fairly well for themselves at these rates.
Just to also give you a bit of perspective again on this, if you look at the best time for Indian corporate sector was between 2004 and 2007 from a sentiment perspective, results, operations, everything. In that period also, there was a 3 to 4% difference between banks lending, not banks, between debt provided to normal corporates and debt provided to real estate. Debt provided to real estate was between 16 and 18%, and to normal corporates was around 11–12%. So the difference has only widened marginally. That is on account of all the factors that happened from 2008 to 2013 in terms of the macro, the various things that have happened in the country and overseas. And my guess is it will only come back to where it was, but it won't come down to the corporate levels ever, at least in the next 5 to 10 years at least.
And there's so many more options for that now. I mean, there are so many more people, there are so many more players. There's
Just
domestic, there's
to
overseas.
tell my colleague, I think what we should do is just keep selling That's the real equity. And we should reach a situation where we don't go to them for money. Interest rates will come down automatically. So, and I think, no pun intended, but if you look...
There's something you said about, what was that thing about appetite for risk?
Yeah, the appetite. So we take risks even in selling, right? We don't know what the elections are going to get, but we are still liquidating stock at whatever price we get today.
That's de-risking.
For us, that's a risk of lost opportunity post-elections. Anyways, so to cut a long story short, I think both of us, both the institutions as well as developers, need to, I like the word of soul searching. We also need to do soul searching, provide information. Sorry?
That's more important.
Yeah, I think no, both ways, sir. If you're saying both ways, then I'm fine.
The opportunities of 80 to 20% are probably limited. That's the reason why we're coming here. If that was available somewhere else, we would have gone somewhere else.
Exactly. So I think
So searching is that.
so. Developers need to be more transparent, get in much more corporate governance in place, and that would reduce 200 basis points of yours. Get a good auditor in place, and that would give us 200 basis. But that you promised, right?
Subject to due diligence.
Just kidding.
Any other questions? On that note, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hari.
Thank you.
May I request to please present mementos. First off to the lady on your left, Ms. Arya, Director, Vice Chairman, Milestone Capital. To Ruby Arya. Can you be honest, sir? No, one by one. Moving on to Mr. Gopalan, CEO, CFO, Wadhwa Group. Turning to the other side, Amar Mirani, CEO, Xander Capital. To Shehzad Madan of Reliance Capital. And may I please request Rishi Kapoor, Sector Head, ETH, do us the honors for a moderator, V. Krishna Kumar of Kotak Equity Fund. Can I have a quick panel photograph, please? Well, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to this panel. They proved that the real funds are still in real estate. Big round of applause. Thank you.